If somebody could shut the door, that would probably help. I'm going to remind people to silence their phones. I'm going to also give a reminder to the committee members that this is the last time we're going to be in this building, meeting for our committee, and it is incumbent upon you to clean out all of your personal belongings from your drawers inside the office and anywhere else you might have them in the building. Any other offices that you happen to use if you have multiple committees, because when they clear the building out, anything that's personal belongings is going to get thrown in the trash. They're only going to be bagging up stuff that's furniture and everything that belongs to the actual state. No, those will be taken care of for you. I still have 5 of the 22-23 Fish and Game law books in the office. Take one if you need one. They need to be removed because I think those will probably get thrown out too. Hate to throw them out, but they're on the desk just as you go in the office. There's 5 of them. I want to make an announcement on something that you probably saw the email. I've decided I'm going to start doing continuing education with the caucus whenever we can fit it in. We're going to have 30 minutes of continuing education on a topic that people might want to get additional information of that we deal with in the committee. The office upstairs, the speaker's office, liked the idea, so they're going to come and do a little video of us doing one today and then share it with other committee chairmen so that maybe they can do the same thing. If you have an idea for a future continuing education, submit it to myself and the vice chair, and we'll be picking some topics as we go through committee hearings going into next year. We have one bill from the Senate that's I'm going to be making a motion of concur on the floor. It was our housekeeping bill, and they added on a much-needed amendment to it that would deal with the Menhaden fish situation between New Hampshire and surrounding states to entail reciprocity between the states and how those fish are caught. They're used as bait for lobsters, and also go by the name pogies. Didn't know anything about them until this whole issue came up. And they've got that amendment added on, so we're just going to concur with that unless anybody here has an objection. I don't think there should be, but you can see me about it if you do. And I will let Mike make an announcement about the field trip for the committee.
Thank you. Last year, we, Fish and Game Committee, had a field trip to Jericho Park, and with some cooperation of some local businesses and clubs, we were able to have some side-by-sides and ATVs and go through the city of Berlin and up through Jericho Park and talk about the industry, the challenges that go along with it, with ATVs. So what I'm proposing this year is it was very successful, I thought, and so we're proposing another committee this year in conjunction with the Committee of Recreation Resources to go with us, because it seems like every ATV bill goes to their committee. And we're looking for some time. It'll be a midweek field trip in mid-June. We'll meet at up in Gorham at Mom's, Jericho. There'll be safety instructions. People from Fish and Game, Bureau Trails will be there. And Fish and Game is very important to the sport up there because they do all the law enforcement on the trails, but we deal with their biologists in building trails and good places to build them and not. So it'll be a midweek trip, and I hope all of you will come.
And if the speaker accepts that field trip, because every committee is allowed to take one a year, if he says yes to it, there will be mileage reimbursed for that trip. It's got to go through, get approval for both committees, but
Are spouses allowed?
that'd be a question for the speaker. I don't know.
So in some of our past field trips, like to Great Bay, spouses did
Yeah.
come. But
I don't see why not. It's not like you're going to get extra mileage for the spouse.
no. Right.
But the planners would need to know because, and Mike will be doing a sign up because they do provide lunches from I think the Wildlife Federation did it last time. Usually somebody sponsors a lunch. All right, with that, does a member of the audience today want to lead us in the pledge? Senator Pearl, we're honored.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. With that, I'm going to open up the hearing on SB 31FN, and I recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Pearl.
Well, good morning, members of the Fish and Game Committee. It's great to be back over here on the House side. For the record, I am Senator Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I live in the beautiful town of Loudon. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 31. This is an act establishing a guide apprentice license. The Guides Association, working in partnership with New Hampshire Fish and Game, has created the idea of providing a one-time opportunity for a person who is considering becoming a licensed guide in New Hampshire to work with a guide license during one of the hunts or fishing trips. This would require the candidate to be accompanied by the licensed guide, offering them the opportunity to learn and experience, hopefully the correct way, to guide New Hampshire hunters and anglers. This would better prepare these people to successfully pass the testing procedures to become a New Hampshire guide, and this will expose these potential guides to the paperwork and record keeping that the New Hampshire Fish and Game requires from all of our licensed guides. This opportunity mirrors the apprentice hunting license we created a few years ago with the New Hampshire Fish and Game that has been very successful, and we are hopeful this step will encourage guide candidates to take advantage of this opportunity to become more familiar and more skilled with guiding people while hunting and fishing in New Hampshire. New Hampshire Fish and Game staff are here today, and they have perhaps some opportunity, will offer some testimony, and hopefully will answer any questions I'm not able to. So, thank you. With
Thank
that,
you.
I would appreciate your support.
Thank you much. Are there any questions? Representative Harvey?
Thank you. Just clarification, you said it's a one-time opportunity. Do you mean it's a one-time opportunity to purchase the apprentice guide license, or a one-time opportunity to actually be an apprentice guide?
It's a one-time opportunity to be an apprentice so that they can go out with a licensed guide.
Okay, so even though they hold, I'll follow up, please.
Follow up?
Thank you. Even if they hold this guide license, they still would not be able to go a second time as an apprentice.
I don't believe that's the intention. I think it's pre-licensing, but I'll defer to Captain Eastman if there's a question on that. I'm not certain on that, but I believe it is pre-license is the intent.
So the guide license, the apprentice license is before they actually have a guide license.
I believe that is the intent.
I get that, but my question was, when you said one-time opportunity, I couldn't understand whether it's a one-time opportunity to purchase the apprentice guide license or a one-time opportunity to actually be an apprentice with that license.
It's a one-time opportunity to be an apprentice with a licensed guide so that they can teach them the proper ways to guide, the folks that they are taking out in the woods.
So in other words, you would not be allowed to continually purchase an apprentice guide and just keep going and going. You get to do it once, be an apprentice once,
Correct.
and then that's
Yes,
it.
That's my understanding of that's the intent.
That's for this now.
Okay, I get that.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. What's the term limit on the license?
Oh, I'm going to have to defer on that one. I don't know that I know the answer to that. That's a good question. I'll let Fishing do.
Captain, you can just join him at the
Yeah, come on
microphone.
up.
You didn't hand in a card, so you can just
Can I do one?
hand it in afterwards.
So it's my understanding that this guide's apprentice license will be set up similar to our hunting apprentice license, which is set up in our rules, but it's a license that you can come in and you will be apprenticed by another hunter. That's how that license is set up right now. So this is set up so that, or will be set up so that you can come in and you would have somebody that you would be working with as a guide who is already a certified guide, and that you could purchase this license. You would work with them for that year because the license would be good for a year. So if it were like they were turkey guiding, or then they went into deer or moose, they would be able to do it throughout the whole season and get that experience so that they would be able to then go forward and take the test and get their actual guide's license after it. That's how the hunting guide apprentice is set up, and that's how I would foresee this to be set up as well.
Representative Harvey?
So now I'm just confused on a higher level. So it's not a one-time opportunity to just go out in the field. You can go out in the field for the term of that license.
That is my understanding, yes, that like I said, similar to that hunting apprentice license, you would be able to go out. So if you wanted to be a hunting guide, you would be able to go out and guide with that guide, and who would be apprenticing you or showing you the ropes, if you will. And then you would be able to see, if maybe this isn't for you, maybe I want to go forward and take the test, but it would really, it's really just speaking to that. Instead of changing the test and making and reducing, what we would expect out of guides now, that it would give them that opportunity to see this is what it is to be a guide.
And I assume it's hunting and fishing.
Yes, it is hunting and fishing.
Representative?
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. So, sitting in this position, I've seen a lot of the guides come in, and it's very intense training and education that they have to be responsible in the job they do. So if a applicant for an apprentice comes in, spends a year with a licensed guide, and says, you know what, I still don't feel quite comfortable enough to take a test, is it extendable for a second year?
It's just my understanding that it would be, like I said, similar to the hunting apprentice, where it's only good for 1 year.
Representative Mattson?
Thanks for taking my question. So if somebody wants to be a fishing guide and a hunting guide, can they go with a different guide? Or is it they can only pick one and that's it? Because they can't re-up for another term?
I don't believe, it's my understanding that I don't believe there's any limitations. Certainly if I guess if the guide or whoever they were apprenticing with were both a hunting and a fishing guide, because there's two differentiations under that, they would not be limited to one or the other. They certainly could do both.
Follow up?
Follow up.
So, I know, so some of it's really intense and you can't fit it all into one season. So would they be able to continue the next season? I mean, hunting season, they're not that long, so would he be able to do it the next year, or she, continue the next year on the apprenticeship?
I'll take that one. If you look at line 15, an apprentice guide license may be purchased only once in the lifetime of the applicant wishing to guide, and it's only for 1 year. So that's the one-time opportunity. And to answer your earlier question, if you look on lines 8 and 9, a person holding a valid guide license may guide in activities. So it doesn't restrict it to one guide. You could guide one person with fishing, one guide with hunting.
Representative Harvey?
So I think this is a great idea, but I think maybe the wording, I see that an apprentice guide license may be purchased only once. So it's not something that can be re-upped. I get that, and I don't have a problem with that. But I don't see anywhere in here that it's, so maybe you can point it out to me, where it says the term of that license. Does that need to be in the bill?
It says one time, and my understanding, all licenses are only good for 1 year. And the captain, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of multi-year licenses.
Hunting and fishing licenses, other than a lifetime license, the hunting and fishing license is January 1 to December 31st.
Right. Any other questions? Representative Darby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Is there a limit on the number of apprentices that a master guide can have?
I don't believe the bill limits that. I don't believe it does in statute.
Follow up.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I've heard in the past some concern about guides partnering up, especially in the North Country. And I'm from Nashua, so I'm very naive in this issue, but partnering up in order to get extra bait sites, bear bait sites. Would this increase the number of bait sites that the master guide would be allowed to have?
That's a great question. It's not one that I think I can answer. I don't believe under the apprentice, and certainly that's something we could put in rules. If this was established, that would stop them from doing that or increase it. But I have heard that same complaint. I do understand it as a concern, but I don't see, this would just allow them to go out with the guide, not
be able to do anything that the guide could do, like put in for bait sites, the extra bait sites, things like that.
That is certainly not the intent of this bill. If the committee is concerned and you wanted to make that, stipulate that in the language, I would consider that a friendly amendment, and I would not be opposed.
We would have to today. Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The chair now calls David Poole from the Rumney. I guess you're not representing the Guides Association this time.
I am not.
Oh, I've got the Guides Association next. Okay. Turn on the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is David Poole. I live in Rumney, and I'm just representing myself. However, I was involved in the initiation of this through the Guides Association and working with law enforcement at Fish and Game. And so there are a couple of things about this I just wanted to, a lot of it was covered by the sponsor and by the captain. But what I did want to point out is that we have sat here for 2 years and had bills come to your committee that would have, the thought process was that Fish and Game and/or the Guides Association did not want more guides. And I just wanted to point out that this is an effort for both by the guide community, in this case specifically the Guides Association, and Fish and Game, to increase the number of guides. As I've testified before, we just don't have enough. So this is our effort to make this easier for a guide to enter the program, easier for them to enter the profession, and potentially understand that it's not something for them. That is primarily, I won't reiterate, support the sponsors and the captain's testimony.
Thank you. Representative?
And you're right, this term we had a bill that there was some complaining about the way the test was given. Is it your hope that this would rectify some of that?
Our hope is that it would, by an individual having the opportunity to spend, and so just to clarify a little bit, I apprenticed under a guide. I just couldn't get paid. This allows someone to get paid to do this, okay? So just to reiterate that. However, our hope is that by having the opportunity to work under a licensed guide, at least our members are very interested in helping people. You know, we may not, I'll give you an example, we may not need to use a compass when I take somebody wade fishing in the Connecticut River, but if I had an apprentice with me, I'd probably take that opportunity to whip one out and say, hey, how would we determine our way out of here, other than the long way we came in. So that would be an example of, I don't anticipate the test changing as a result of this. I anticipate the applicant being more prepared to do it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. The chair calls Ken Dunn, New Hampshire Guides Association. I think I got the name right. Dion, okay.
I understand if you can't read my hieroglyphics. So, good morning, everybody.
You must be a doctor.
My name's Ken Dion. I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Guides Association. I reside in New Boston, New Hampshire. We are in favor of this bill. I think you already know that. But I'm going to reiterate kind of what Dave said. You know, we do want to we want more people getting involved with hunting and guiding in the state. Kids these days, they spend a lot more time in front of the television or their phone than they do outdoors. This is just a way to entice them to get out there. It's certainly going to be useful to us as guides. In my particular case, I happen to be a bear hunting guide. We hunt over baits. And in my case, if I was to get injured, say the day before hunting season started, nobody can place bait on that bait site except myself as a licensed guide. Last year I had 3 people, one from Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. You know, they fly up here, they rent cars, you know, food, gas, lodging, hunting license, et cetera. If I got hurt the day before that happened, they're out of a hunt. Now, if I have an apprentice guide working with me, here's a guy that, you know, I can accompany him, but if I'm not physically strong enough to place bait, here's a guy that can do that for me. So it's kind of a win-win for the state as well as us, because it keeps that revenue stream coming. Because if something like that happens, these guys that are hunting with me, they're gonna jump over to the state of Maine, and they're probably gonna stay in the state of Maine. So we wanna keep them here. And as far as the young kids, the apprentices are concerned, they're gonna be learning all kinds of stuff in the field, you know, as far as hunter etiquette and how to deal with people, how to find their way in and out of the woods. So we are just 100% in favor of this. I'd like to see it pass.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions? Representative Harvey?
So you kind of answered Representative Darby's question, correct? In that only the licensed guides can place bait at a bait station, not the apprentice. So you wouldn't get more bait stations.
That's correct. So the baiting, in order for me to get a permit to bait bears, I have to go through a certain process with the state in applying for that. And there's a limit of 50 baiting permits throughout the state. And so I'm allowed 6 bait sites. That's not gonna change for me. This apprentice guide, he's not a guide per se. He will not have taken the test, got his guide's license, so he would not be able to apply for bait sites. And I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's correct. You know, without a guide's license, he can't get those permits. And even if he had his guide's license, he may not be able to get them because it's limited to only 50 permits per year. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody here who has not testified that wishes to testify? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the hearing on SB 31FN. And seeing that it's time, I will open the hearing on SB 32 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Pearl.
Good morning again, fellow committee members. I'm going to be very quick, because I have to be in criminal justice in about 6 minutes. So for the record, I am Senator Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I live in the town of Loudon. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 32, an act relative to the Fish and Game Commission. The Fish and Game Department requested this bill as a housekeeping measure. This would allow the department to post public hearing notices required by law to be posted digitally on a newspaper website, which is not allowed under the current law. More and more publications are available only online today and not being offered in print format. This would allow the department a more efficient way to post these notices. This also makes changes to our law allowing the shooting of injured or crippled waterfowl from a motorized craft. The federal law already allows for this activity and would allow us to mirror in the same in state law and eliminate the issue of having federal law conflicting with state laws. The department does have a couple of changes they want to make here. They would like to remove the word brook from the reference to trout within our laws in an effort to cover all species of trout instead of referencing just brook trout. This would enable the Executive Director of Fish and Game to set fisheries habitat fees and administrative rules. Most of their fees now are set up and controlled through administrative rules. Finally, this bill would repeal the Connecticut River Atlantic Salmon Commission. The commission term has expired and the name has changed, and their authorities have been reestablished under rule. There's one other change that they would like to make, and I'm going to let them speak to it, but I'm going to briefly cover it for you. So,
Senator, if I may clarify, these
Yes.
changes are already in the version we're looking at. We don't need to pull an amendment on these. I'm reading them. The changes are actually in there already.
yeah,
In your amended version
Yes.
from the Senate.
but there is
Okay.
there is one more change they need you to do.
Okay.
And that is, the provisions of this section shall not apply to shooting of injured or crippled waterfowl from a motorized watercraft. They want to change this, and Dan is going to cover it if I get this wrong. The provisions of this section to, the provisions of this section shall not apply to shooting of crippled waterfowl from a motorboat under power in the sea duck hunting area. There's a little technicality that needs to be changed there. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to ask that your questions be referred to the Fish and Game staff,
Understood.
because my apologies, I am under a really tight schedule today.
Understood.
With that, I appreciate you listening, and hope you will support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair now calls Captain Eastman, Fish and Game Department.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I just wanted to speak on that one change, and
Do you know what line that would be on?
it would fall.
Okay, so 21, you just want added within the sea duck area.
That's correct, and that sea ducks would be defined in rules after the fact, so there wasn't any confusion there.
All right.
The reasoning for that is that this really brings our law into parity with the federal law, and so sea ducks a little bit different than what you'd find inland, and certainly Dan can speak about that as well. Is that what we find is that you get a lot of crippling of ducks where sea ducks are diving ducks, so whenever you try to get up to them to retrieve them, they dive down. Whereas if they are crippled and they would then, this would allow the hunter to be able to get up onto the duck and be able to take the duck without losing it, because they will go down for quite a while and then not come up. So, but really, we're just looking to make that change, that it speak to sea ducks and not.
So if I could ask Dan to tell me the exact language for that sea duck area so that we can make sure that the amendment is drawn appropriately.
Yep.
And I will send someone to OLS to get that amendment so we can still deal with this today.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Bergeron, I'm the Chief of the Wildlife Division. I'm at New Hampshire Fish and Game. Yeah, so I could email you the amendment right after I leave here, or do you want me to just give you the language now?
If you could just give us the language, and then
perfect.
I'll send a person down to OLS to pull that amendment.
Okay. So the language would be under that section 5, it would be, the provisions of this section shall not apply to shooting of injured or crippled waterfowl from a motorboat under power in the sea duck hunting area.
You want specifically motorboat, not motorized watercraft? It says motorized watercraft right now.
That would be fine to keep it
Motorized watercraft in,
the sea duck hunting area.
okay.
And so our rules for waterfowl are actually exempt rules. They don't have to follow the 541A process because we're largely mirroring federal regulations. We just submitted our waterfowl rules, with the inclusion of the definition of the sea duck hunting area. It had somehow been removed in a previous process. We noticed that. We believe that's why this language was missing from this bill. So we got that definition put back in our rules so that there is that definition now of the sea duck hunting area, and it is effective as of April 16th.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Not with respect to the sea ducks, but with request to the addition of the website. I was surprised to see that. Do you actually need an exemption to allow posting for the websites, or is the website in lieu of being printed in the paper?
I think we would prefer in lieu of having to print in the paper, because again, it's difficult to find papers that are in print, and the way that it was written, this just gives the department more flexibility to post the notice of the hearings.
Can I
Follow up.
Thank you. So, I appreciate that, and I use the web for everything, but I know a fair number of my friends in my club that I don't think use the web. And they do, I believe, in my opinion, the union leaders, largely a statewide paper, and this does talk about a statewide paper. So, I hope that the department would also continue to publish those there so that, the older generation can continue to, see those notices.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this that has not had a chance to speak? Seeing none? Yeah. Dan, I need a pink card from you, please. I'm going to close the hearing on SB 32. I need Dan to fill out a pink card for that last bill, and I would ask, is there anyone here who wants to volunteer to go down to OLS with this copy and ask for those words to be put in so that we have an amendment we can deal with at some point today? You want to run down? OLS? It's over in the, it's in the State House. Have you not been to OLS before?
Not yet.
Does anybody who, I don't want you to get lost. You want to take it down?
Isn't the State House what you're
Well, actually, you're gonna have to run things when I introduce. It's on the first floor in the State House. Yeah,
I'll bring my phone just again.
okay.
Just, she wants to wait for, or they're gonna send it right back so we can act on it today?
Yeah, just have them send it over to, they can email it to our committee assistant, and she'll print us copies. And ask them to please do it ASAP. Thanks. All right, we still have time before the next bill starts, so, because we've got to start it at 10:40. So we might as well take a little break if everybody wants to take a break. It's a good time to go run for an amendment anyway. 10:40, and I will open the hearing on SB 235. And I recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Waters. Welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Senator David Waters from District 4 to introduce Senate Bill 35, enabling funds from Pittman-Robertson Act to be spent by the Fish and Game Department on threatened and endangered species in New Hampshire. As you recall, Mr. Chairman, this was unanimous recommendation number 6 from the Senate Bill 542 study committee that we had last summer, which looked at a lot of funding issues related to fish and game and trying to find ways in which we could take some pressure off their budgets by giving them more flexibility to use funding that they could acquire. This bill, as you'll see, strikes out the lines on the use of the Pittman-Robertson funds, striking out or from the taxes on the sale of equipment to hunters, fishermen, or trappers. Now, what this funding and the reason for the restrictions is that we want to be sure that the people who hunt and fish are paying fees for their licenses, that funding goes to activities in land conservation for game species. And so that the folks who are hunting and fishing by their license aren't seeing their funding kind of funneled away to purposes that don't directly benefit the activities they're interested in. But we were the only state that had the kind of limitation that on the sale of equipment. And that on that equipment sale, and it's a majority of equipment purchases of guns and ammunition are for target shooting and not for hunting. So it seemed to make some logical sense here that if we remove that restriction, then some of these funds could be used. Without this kind of funding, it has made it very difficult for the department of late to have sufficient matching funds for conservation efforts such as those identified in the Wildlife Action Plan. There's a certain amount of money in particular that the federal government puts on the table that we can use if we can get match for it to acquire property to protect wildlife and threatened and endangered species. And the fear is that the way it's always has been done is try to cobble together some unspent money here, there, and so on. And given the real funding issues at Fish and Game, robbing Peter to pay Paul was not going to be sufficient. So what this will let Fish and Game do is have that kind of flexibility to address significant financial challenges to make sure that we have this match. I know that Mr. Bergeron is here to talk about some more details about it, but I think that this really will ensure that the department has the kind of flexibility, and I think there's a real logic to the way that is done to make sure that hunters and people who hunt and fish don't feel that they're subsidizing another activity, but this seems like a fair way to go forward to provide the flexibility to the department. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to take questions, and a lot more detail will be coming from Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your testimony, and I'll start out with a question because I think a lot of the people here may not have read our report from that special committee that we had last summer, and not everyone was present to hear them. But one of the things that I believe you touched upon here should get some more clarification as well. By removing this, since we're one of the minority states that actually has this restriction, that Pittman-Robertson money that comes from the sale of those the ammunition, the tackle supplies, and all of that could be used for the non-game species, endangered species, but could also be used by Fish and Game if they wanted to set up a state firing range for target shooters, or a trap range, or something for the recreational shooters. Fish and Game would have that flexibility now to be able to spend the money on activities that are not specifically dealing with game species. Is that correct?
Indeed, and I think you make an excellent point about that kind of flexibility to make sure that the folks who are paying these charges get some benefit from it, aside from the public good of protecting the non-game and endangered species. And I would note that I believe that we are the only state that has restrictions at this point. The only
I
state.
don't remember the exact numbers, but I know it was very small if we were not the only one. Yeah. Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you for your time here today.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Carol Foss from New Hampshire Audubon.
Good morning, Chair Spillane and members of the committee. I'm Carol Foss, Senior Advisor for Science and Policy at New Hampshire Audubon. We are strongly in support of Senate Bill 235. I was around when New Hampshire's Endangered Species and Conservation Act was passed in 1979, I think it was. And at that time, New Hampshire's Pittman-Robertson allocation was approximately $500,000. And there were 83,408 licensed hunters in the state of New Hampshire. Pittman-Robertson funds require, I believe it's a 75-25 match. So the state needs to put up 25% and 75% of federal monies are forthcoming. At that time, there was plenty of match from license fees in the state of New Hampshire, and the sporting community was rightfully concerned that some of their monies would be diverted for conservation work on threatened and endangered species. Hence, this restriction was written into the bill at that time. Fast forward to today, New Hampshire's Pittman-Robertson allocation exceeds $5 million, and we now have, or in 2024, we had 60,323 licensed hunters in the state. In recent years, it's been more and more challenging for Fish and Game to come up with that 25% match for our full allocation, be it from hunting and trapping licenses or donated land acquisitions. It's just getting harder and harder. So by excluding that language from the bill provides the department with the opportunity to accept matching funds from partner organizations, Nature Conservancy, Audubon, who can put up the match, who are doing work on threatened and endangered species, and can ensure that New Hampshire gets our full allocation of PR funds. If there's sufficient match in the department, making this change to the bill has no effect whatsoever. If the state falls short of that match, then partners can step in, provide the match, and ensure that the money, full allocation, benefits wildlife in New Hampshire rather than getting remanded to the Fish and Wildlife Service and spent in some other state. So I'm happy to answer any questions and fervently hope that you will vote this bill to pass.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. The chair now calls Dan Bergeron from Fish and Game. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Dan Bergeron, I'm the Chief of the Wildlife Division with New Hampshire Fish and Game. So yeah, really this is about allowing the department the flexibility to use these PR dollars. As Carol had pointed out, the allocations have increased pretty substantially over the years, where we average about $5.5 million in PR allocations. I'll also note that so PR is specific to wild birds and mammals. So the federal regulations, the intent is for this money to be used for the conservation, management, restoration of wild birds and mammals. So we wouldn't be able to use it on all threatened and endangered species, but those that are birds and mammals, we could. So that's kind of an important distinction. We are the only state in the nation that has this restriction. There are other states that, so Maine, for example, uses PR dollars to go towards their eastern New England cottontail efforts. The because the allocations have gotten so high, and Carol pointed out license sales are on the decline, we are kind of always flirting with the line of having to revert some of these federal dollars. As you're all well aware, the state budget in general is very tight going forward into the next 2 years. So it may be even more difficult for the department to come up with matching funds to utilize all this federal money. So I think now more than ever is an important time to allow the flexibility within the department. Another thing to keep in mind is the types of species. So if you think of, the recovery of turkey in the state, at the time, this money wouldn't have been able to be used to recover turkeys. We did research on American marten. That was funded through all non-game donations. We weren't able to utilize any PR dollars on that research. There's work with grassland birds. There's a number of things, but it really opens up the possibility of the species that we can work on, the ability to utilize this money and to not revert it. And again, I think now more than ever, with budgets being what they are, particularly over at the department, this would be very helpful to us. And as Senator Waters pointed out, this was one of the recommendations from the recent study committee on funding of the department. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I thank you for your time and hope that you would vote this to pass.
Thank you. Are there any questions? You have one? Go ahead, Rep.
I
Mattson.
apologize for being out of the beginning of this hearing. The endangered and threatened wildlife of New Hampshire list has not been upgraded since 2017. Do we know when we're going to get a new list? And I'm also concerned that if we take our money from here, and New Hampshire is dependent a lot on tourist dollars, and if we don't keep our the hunting and fishing funds high enough, that could be in jeopardy as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, our non-game program is actually going through the process of updating our state wildlife action plan. So updates to that endangered and threatened species list should be part of that process. As far as so you make a very good point that tourism is a big draw to the state of New Hampshire, and at the department we think a lot of the good work that we do really benefits the state in that regard. There's been a number of surveys done over the years that show that there's quite a bit of money in tourism that comes from hunting and fishing. By and large, the vast majority of tourism dollars come from folks that are non-consumptive users. So there's actually much higher revenue that comes into the state from people that just enjoy viewing wildlife. That's not to discount the benefit from hunters and fishermen, but survey after survey shows that non-consumptive users of the outdoors typically generate more money and revenue. That said, our game populations are all higher than most of them are higher than they have been in a long time. We're currently going through the readoption of our 10-year big game management plan. We actually just finished up some of our public hearings on that. And if you look back just 40 years ago, which was actually about the time we did our first long-term plan for these species, 1983, there were 3,000 deer in the total harvest of the state. Now we average about 11,000. In the 80s, there were virtually no turkeys. I saw I saw your face when I mentioned turkey. So you seem well aware that there's plenty of turkeys in the state. Our bear population has increased. Our moose population is facing some challenges through winter ticks, but we've been able to do a lot of really good research over the years with UNH. So we are able to meet those obligations. Our game populations are very strong, and we feel we have sufficient money to do that. And this gives the department the flexibility to choose where that money would go. And the important note is we did keep, as Senator Waters pointed out, this is specific to the federal dollars. Any money from hunting or trapping license sales would not be able to be used for this. That would be strictly for management of game species.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here who has not testified that wishes to? Seeing no one, I will close the hearing on SB 235. Yes, SB 235. And I'm going to turn things over to Mike so that I can introduce the next.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing for the amendment 2025-1603H to SB 235. Chairman Spillane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I drafted this amendment because it is one of those important things that we had come up in the summer special committee hearing on long-term funding for Fish and Game. It was a corner solution, but it is one of those aspects that has a deeper reach, because one of the things we asked Fish and Game to do was, rather than increase license fees and potentially take money from taxpayers, we want them to also do whatever they can to continue to work as a self-funded department. And that being that is the case, we want them to partner with retail establishments as well when possible. One of the ideas was that retail establishments could sell HikeSafe cards for them, et cetera, maybe offer discounts in their store if someone has a HikeSafe card. But another was simply allowing them to take point-of-sale donations, so that if they go into Bass Pro, when you're checking out, it could have that thing that pops up and says, do you want to give $1 to Fish and Game? And right now, Fish and Game can't accept that money, but I drafted this amendment so that it would go into a fund where Fish and Game can use that money. They can designate the point-of-sale locations and partner with those retail establishments, and the fund that it goes into for Fish and Game is not dedicated to just hiking for the HikeSafe. It's not dedicated to just endangered. They'd be able to use it wherever they need it, which will give Fish and Game more flexibility in their budgeting and be able to use that money wherever it's needed within the Fish and Game structure. And I would hope that people who are hiking could donate to Fish and Game, knowing that, well, this is going to go towards rescuing hikers. People who are caring about the endangered species could donate the $1 and say, yeah, well, this will help out with the endangered species. And those who are hunters and fishermen could definitely give their $1 as well. It's a little thing, but it's important that we have in law the ability for them to actually accept these donations at point-of-sale locations. Otherwise, their hands are tied. And with that, I will take any questions.
Seeing no, sorry, Representative Harvey?
Is there any accounting for this? Like, I assume we'll see that through the Fish and Game Department budget. That
It would be a line item in their budget.
Any other questions? Representative Darby?
Just a question for you, Mr. Chair. Are we going to hear from Fish and Game on this or not? Is there anyone else testifying?
I don't think they put a card in.
They have not put a card in.
I'll ask you and see. Thank you for taking my question. I'm just curious how it seems like the Fish and Game Fund is used for. It's defined in 20633, I guess, and some of it seems to be restricted by 20634 about uses for conservation, restoration, management, and it seems like you're tailoring these funds towards that goal. But some of the other clauses, some of the other subparagraphs in 20633, dash D, dash E, don't seem to have those same restrictions. And so I'm just curious about the Fish and Game Fund and how, this is sort of related to Representative Harvey's question, how they manage like the different the different sources of money and if they actually have to use those different sources in different ways, even though it's in the same fund?
Good question. I actually relied on the OLS drafting communications with the Legislative Budget Office, where they recommended which fund should be the one we designate it to go into if we want it to not be specialized and go into only certain specific areas. And this is what the Legislative Budget Office said. So I assume it's correct. That's maybe a big assumption on my part, but we do tend to trust the Legislative Budget Office when they're talking about funds and such.
Representative Khan.
Thank you, Representative, taking my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question is it voluntary donation or mandatory donation?
It's entirely voluntary. It will just pop up and say, do you want to donate $1 or whatever the amount is, you know? Do you want to, sometimes it's a roundup. Do you want to round up your purchase to make sure you donate? You've seen them probably on checkouts now for feeding hungry children or the stray cats or something like that, you know? It's not the music group.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chairman Spillane. Seeing no other, are there anyone else who'd like to give any testimony on this amendment? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on the 2025-1063 amendment to SB 235.
And it's now 11. We have,
Oh, before you go into executive session.
I wasn't going to go in there yet.
Okay.
We have an amendment that's being drafted for one of the bills, and I'd like to make sure we have that in hand before we exec. If everybody wants to take a 15-minute break, that will also allow you guys to caucus if you want to have a caucus.
I would.
That
So-
would be fine.
Could I see the Dems, please, in your?
You can use
in
my
your
office. We'll be in a 15-minute break. We'll hopefully come back about 11:15 and, or a little after 11:15 and move into exec session. person, but we'll go ahead and start our continuing education. And the chair is very glad to see that we have Captain Eastman here to talk to us about gauges and calibers and actions, and answer those questions that people have after you've heard his presentation. Take it away.
Thank you for taking my question. Just, we see a lot of the ARs running at 223 and a 556. Why are they just different? It seems like 223 and 556 numbers don't quite jive, do they?
Yeah, like the, so when you see it in millimeters, it's a NATO designation round. If you see it in the caliber, the inches, point something, it's American. And like, for instance, the diameter of a bullet for a 380 is the same exact diameter as a 9mm. The 380's got a smaller brass shell. It's shorter by about 3mm or so. So it's same size bullet, but the casing that holds the powder is much smaller on a 380, so it can be a more compact pistol, but it doesn't have as much power, etc. Ruger makes a 7.62 308 and a 223 5.56, where they actually made them completely interchangeable to every degree. You can shoot either round; it doesn't matter, because I've got the 308 and 7.62. When you have a 7.62, the casing's just slightly longer, like a thousandth of an inch longer. It's very, very tiny length difference. But the 308 has more power in the powder charge. So if you shoot 7.62s through a 308, they'll jam sometimes because the case is just a little bit too long. And if you shoot 308s through a 7.62, you're going to be beating your piston to death because it's not set up to take that much power. Ruger made this one with an adjustable gas knob on the front, so it's chambered for the longer 7.62, and they call it the SR 7.62. You'll never have a jam because the 308 is shorter and it's made for the longer 7.62. But you can adjust the gas down if you're shooting a 308 through it so that it's not using so much gas against the piston. It ejects more of the gas out into the atmosphere and reduces the amount of beating on the piston. Same exact bullets, but they just have a tiny little difference in them.
Thank you. Where we're talking about the different calibers when we're hunting, can you explain the difference in the relationship of the caliber to the muzzle velocity and what effect it has on the hunted animals? You know, like a 223 versus, like you said, a 30-06. And what's the relationship between the charge, the muzzle velocity, and what it's going to do to your animal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So can you hunt with the 9 millimeter AR-15?
It would, so right now, the law says a 357 pistol cartridge or greater, but you could, you can't use anything that would be a 22 rimfire for big game. So outside of, so let's say outside of any area that was restricted, you could use it. You could use a 22 Hornet, which is a center fire round, but it's a 22, but it shoots a 22 projectile. So just because it carries more powder, it can be used. So a 9mm would be fine in those areas. We would recommend it per se because, you know, once again, it's not going to have. We're about fair chase and making sure that that animal is retrievable and that it stays in good condition for the hunter. So that's what we do.
It's not a common gun, isn't it? Right.
We don't see it very often. Not
I know a lot of target shooters assemble their own ammunition because they go through so much of it. Do hunters do the same thing?
Yes, I do.
I know you do.
In fact, if you have to buy 4570, you'll find out real quick it's much cheaper to reload your own 4570.
So how do you, if you're assembling your own, how do you make sure that you're doing it so that you are doing it properly and reach the specifications that you've outlined here?
Yeah, so I'm not.
We have not only a bench press that takes out the old primer, puts a new one in, and that there's a powder measurer that sits on top that once you calibrate it, it will put the same amount of powder in each one. But you follow a recipe book from the ammo manufacturers that say, when you're reloading this, these are the different types of powder you can use, and here's how much you would use if it's that type of powder, and you follow that, and you're using a digital scale to make sure that you have the right amount of powder calibrated before you start loading everything. And the powder is measured in grains, which is a very small amount, as in if I put 2 extra tiny little grains of powder on there, my number's gonna change. So it's very accurate. And yeah, everything is done with calipers to measure the length as well, because obviously when you crimp everything down, the bullet has to be the same length every single time. So it's gotta be all set up. Once you've got everything set up, that's the hard part, setting everything up. Once you've got it all set up, it just goes like clockwork. Everything's the same. But it takes a long time. Yeah, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions now?
Is
I-
the book going to have to be edited to add air rifles now?
We probably will be adding air rifles to the educational book.
It's, I'm sure that they'll touch on that, but it's gonna require, obviously, it's gonna be almost like a little more unique, like your muzzle loader would be, but certainly safety and things like that would certainly follow this.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you kicking off our inauguration continuing education. This is the very first continuing education. And Deborah was here to sort of take pictures and give the idea to other chairmen if they wanted to do continuing education in their committees. Every one I reload when I reload is individual. I have to do each one by itself. I don't have a. I wait till I've collected like, I don't know, 50 or 100 and then do them. Yeah.
They have progressive loaders too.
They do have those, but I didn't
So,
buy one. A progressive one has like usually a wheel, and so you put a bunch of them in there, like 10 at a time, and you every time you turn it, it will move to the next one, so you can reload a few without having to take each one in and out.
It's like a semi-automatic trigger.
I don't reload shotguns. Really depends on whether I've already set the dies up, and I mean, it's very quick and easy to do a 45-70 because everything's so big. When you got to start dealing with a 380 and the tiny little brass, it takes a lot longer because you're going to drop them and you have to find them. And yeah, it's and then the ones with a neck down are challenging setting the thing up because the press also will resize the neck to make sure it's still within spec. And if you get that wrong, you've messed up the whole brass and you got to throw it out because you push the neck down too far or something. So getting those adjusted, I still haven't got my 308 set up appropriately. It doesn't do the neck yet. I got to wipe it out and start from scratch and get the measurements right and start it all over again. Yeah, I do have the carbide, but the first one I did was pushing the neck too much. So
You could spend days down there and stuff.
it's not more efficient, but it's more cost effective. Because if I buy a box of 20 45-70s, I could spend as much as $80 for 20 rounds, especially when we had the COVID scarcity. If I reload them myself, I'm just buying some regular 45 bullets that could have been in a 45 anything, and it's the same diameter. It's a 45. So you can get those pretty cheap. You can buy a box of 100 of those for like $30. That's 100. And then you can buy the powder in 5 pounds or 1 pound or whatever, and you're only using X number of grains, so a pound is going to last you years, unless you shoot a lot. And you buy a box of 1,000 primers, that doesn't cost much either. So, if you have to buy more brass, that can be expensive, but if you're reusing brass, it's cheaper. No, I use smokeless.
I read a book about buffalo hunters, and in the book they talk about them saving their shells and then reloading. I can't imagine like reloading the shells in out on the prairie.
I know, right?
Hey, you do what you gotta do.
Yep. Okay.
That's great.
We will do some execs and hopefully get our amendment back in time to be able to do that. But if not, we can take a break and have lunch. But I think that we'll get quickly through some things if we move into exec session. Somebody want to move that we move into exec session? You can make the motion and you seconded. So we're now moving into exec session, and we're going to take up SB 31FN, establishing an apprentice guide license. Do we have a motion?
I motion not to pass.
OTP has been moved by Rep. Harvey. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second, Rep. Pearson.
I think, oh, may I speak to it?
You may.
Thank you. I think the questions that we had this morning were answered. I was a little concerned about some of the wording, but I think as we looked at it a little bit more closely, the concerns about purchasing it once, but being able to go out more than once and not having additional bait stations and so forth were all answered in the bill.
Thank you. I'll comment too, as I think that this might prepare people more when they go into that guides test, and give them some real world experience also, as we heard, to decide maybe this isn't for me. And maybe it's all the paperwork they have to do that they didn't realize they were going to have to do that makes them decide they didn't want to do it. But, you know, they'll experience it in the field. And if I was the guide, the master guide, I'd be making the apprentice do all the paperwork. Any other comments or discussion on the bill that we are now moving OTP? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Chairman Spillane,
Yes?
Vice Chairman Oulette,
Yes.
Representative Khan,
Yes.
Representative Mattson,
Yes.
Representative Tudor,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
Representative Aldrich.
He's not here.
Oh, hello.
Glenn did not show.
Representative Durkin,
Yes.
Representative Harvey,
Yes.
Representative Darby,
Yes.
Representative Levitt,
Yes.
Representative Jacobs,
Yes.
Representative O'Rourke,
Yes.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Stone. Oh, how did I not? I guess I didn't pay attention. And then the clerk votes yes as well.
Consent? All righty.
So we have 14 yeses.
We're going to skip SB 32. We will take up, oh, well, that closes the exec session on SB 31. We'll take up SB 235 now. And I will look for a motion.
Ought to pass.
Rep. Harvey moves ought to pass. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. We now have a motion on the floor of OTP, and now I will offer the amendment that we heard on this bill. We will all take a discussion now on the amendment. I'm going to offer, what was the number on that?
1603.
16038. And I'm going to move OTP on the amendment.
Who was on OTP? Who was it moved by and seconded by?
It was moved by Harvey and seconded all the way down.
O'Rourke.
O'Rourke, thank you. I'm sorry, Representative. All the nameplates face the people, and I can't always see them.
Oh, no.
Oh, geez, they put you in the wrong spot. And I moved the OTP on the amendment, seconded by Oulette. And I will just say that this amendment, I think, is going to give some more flexibility to Fish and Game on their funding by allowing them to take donations at retail establishments if they can get that partnership going. I think that there's plenty of retail establishments in the state that that would be willing to do so. Many of our bait shops, hunting and fishing stores, gun stores, Bass Pro Shops, REI for hiking equipment. There's a lot that we heard in the summertime would be willing to partner as a private partner agreement because they benefit from Fish and Game's activities by bringing the tourism up here, and Fish and Game benefits that way from the retail establishments as well. So I hope that we can all support the amendment. Representative Harvey.
And I would support the amendment as well because it's set up so that the Fish and Game has discretion over how the funds should be used.
Any other discussions on the amendment? Representative Darby.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to reinforce what Chairman Spillane said with respect to the study committee over the summer, and it was in particular looking at partnerships between Fish and Game and the community. We know that Granite Staters are generous. They want to support the outdoors because we have such a beautiful natural environment, and this will give them the opportunity to do so. So I appreciate the chairman for bringing this amendment forward.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? The clerk may call the roll. And that turns the other bill into OTPA.
Gotcha. Okay. Chairman Spillane,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Oulette,
Yes.
Rep. Khan,
Yes.
Representative Mattson,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
Representative Tudor,
Yes.
Representative Durkin,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Harvey,
Oops, yes.
Representative Darby,
Yes.
Representative Levitt,
Yes.
Representative Jacobs,
Yes.
Representative O'Rourke,
Yes.
Representative Pearson.
Yes.
That's 14 yeses.
Okay, the amendment passes. We are now on SB 235 OTPA. And if there's any discussion on this now that the amendment's been added, we can go there. And if there's none, I'll have the clerk call the roll. Do I see any discussion needed? No. Clerk may call the roll.
Chairman Spillane,
Yes?
Vice Chairman Oulette,
Yes.
Representative Khan,
Yes.
Representative Mattson,
Yes.
Representative Tudor,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
Representative Durkin,
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Harvey,
Yes.
Representative Darby,
Yes.
Representative Levitt,
Yes.
Representative Jacobs,
Yes.
Representative O'Rourke,
Yes.
Representative Pearson.
Yes.
It's 14 yeses.
Move consent.
Consent it is, without objection. I always wanted to say that. All right. We do not, I just saw the committee assistant come in and say that we do not have the amendment yet for SB 32. So we're going to hold off on that. Is there anybody who can't come back after we take a lunch break?
Is it possible, are you allowed to vote on an amendment provided that it states what we said it was to state?
I have to check on that. We can take a 2-minute break while I check and see if we can discuss and take up the amendment even though we don't have it in hand. But we all know what we drafted with
right.
those 4 sentences. That would be much preferable. So let me go and check on that. And at the moment, I'm going to exit the exec session. We'll come back to the exec session after I find out what we're doing.
It's like 4 words, that's all it is.
4 words, and we're waiting on 4 words. I don't like waiting on 4 words. Depending on what the words are, but. You've won $1 million. I'd wait on that one. Hang around for 15 minutes or so. That'd be.
That's 5.
I know it's 5. So we have options. We cannot take up the amendment until we have it in hand. We can take a break, come back after lunch as long as we're still going to have a quorum. Doesn't matter if some people have to leave, as long as we can still maintain a quorum, we can still do the exec session and get it done after lunch, if anybody that can come back. If we find that enough people can't come back or don't want to come back after lunch, we could do it during lunch on our next session day and have everybody come over here like we did before, just to vote on the one amendment and bill. I'd rather not drag everybody over there during a session day, so I hope we can just finish it up today. But can I see a show of hands of who is going to have to leave after a lunch break if we say an hour? Because they can't get anybody in OLS. Apparently, they're all at lunch. You got to leave? Okay. And you have to leave?
I could leave by 1:30. So I'd have like 15 minutes.
Well, we're going to get done in 5 minutes when we take it up, so we'll be fine. All right. I think I know we'll still have a quorum, even if you two have to leave. That's fine. Let's go ahead and take an hour for lunch. It's 12:15 now. We'll be back at 1:15, and hopefully we've gotten the message, the amendment from OLS. They're literally taking an amendment that was already drafted for Howard in the Senate and just putting different names on it. So I don't know why it's taking this long, but now they can't be reached because they're at lunch over there. So 1 hour, and we'll get this done and be done with all of our bills for this year. I have it in hand. Before I open it, I will say, I told Jamie that as far as I was concerned, when they said that I must have the amendment in hand, we did not need a copy for everyone. I just needed to have one in my hand. So just print me one, I will have it in hand, and we will deal with it. And why is my phone, it's another one of those spam calls. So I have one. If everybody wants to see it, you can see it, but it says exactly what we just did. We added while in the sea duck hunting area. That's it. All right. So I will now open the hearing, the exec session, sorry, on SB 32. And I will look for a motion on SB 32.
Oh, ought to pass. Let's get this
Okay. And actually, no, you can't. You're a sub.
Oh.
Subs can't move or second.
I can make an amendment, but I can't stop.
Yeah, you can make the amendment. Any member, here's another good point for everybody. You do not have to be a member of a committee to offer a committee amendment. You just need somebody in the committee willing to take your amendment forward and offer it to the committee. You can make an amendment for any committee in the House as any House member, but you need to have someone on the committee willing to say, yes, I'll introduce it to the committee on the floor, because obviously you, as not a member of the committee, can't introduce the amendment. But you do not have to be an actual member of the committee to make the amendment. So Rep. Mattson made our amendment not as a substitute on the committee, but as a member of the House who wanted to make an amendment and gave it to me to bring forward. That's how that technically works. Just Mattson. I told them to throw my name on there too, but they didn't, and I don't care. I'm not going to send it back. So, moved by. Okay, and seconded. Good. So it has now been moved and seconded OTP. Is there any discussion on that before I offer an amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to offer amendment number 2025-1720H. This amendment changes section 5 to say the provisions of this section shall not apply to shooting of injured or crippled waterfowl from a motorized watercraft while in the sea duck hunting area. So while in the sea duck hunting area is the new language that was added by this amendment. The rest of the bill stays the same. And with that, I offered it. Do we have a second on the amendment? There we go. It's been offered and seconded. We are now open to discussion. And if anybody wants to make any comments or questions, we'll take them. And if not, we're just going to move forward.
Who was that moved by and seconded by?
Moved by me.
Yep.
Seconded by Tudor. And the clerk may call the roll on the amendment.
Chairman Spillane,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Oulette,
Yes.
Representative Tudor. Yes. Representative Durkin. Is he gone? Oh.
Yeah, he's gone.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Harvey.
Yes.
Representative Darby.
Yes.
Representative Levitt.
Yes.
Representative Jacobs.
Yes.
Representative O'Rourke.
Yes.
Representative Pearson.
Yes.
All right. Let's see here.
You missed Mattson.
You missed me.
Oh, hello.
You
I just
missed-
went
and
all the
Boyd.
way down.
You missed Boyd.
Representative Mattson
Yes.
and Representative Boyd.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's make sure everybody else. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Should be like
7,
12.
8, 9, 11, 12 yeses.
I knew that because we had 14 before
Right.
we lost 2. All right. The amendment passes. The bill is now amended by the committee, and we will move to discussion of OTPA on SB 235. I mean SB 32. Sorry. I was looking one line down. OTPA on SB 32, and discussion's open if anybody has any discussion on it. Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even though Fish and Game isn't here, I just want to re-express the statement that I made for the record while they were here, that while I appreciate that many municipalities no longer have printed newspapers, those that do, they should still be utilizing those for those that rely on printed papers, and I hope that they don't, move to only printing things in online newspapers. So I just want to state it for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. As somebody who enjoys a printed book and does not read them online, I agree with you. Print is many times better. Any other discussion on the bill? Clerk may call the roll.
Chairman Spillane,
Yes?
Vice Chairman Ulett,
Yes.
Representative Matson,
Yes.
Representative Tudor,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Harvey,
Yes.
Representative Darby,
Yes.
Representative Lovett, Representative Jacobs,
Yes.
Representative O'Rourke,
Yes.
Representative Pearson.
Yes.
12 yeses.
Consent? All right,
So,
you can vote.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say publicly, if we gave out prizes on this Fish and Game Committee for the person who asked the most questions, I would probably win hands down. And you've been very gracious and allowed me to do so. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate engagement, and you've been very engaged. I will remind those who made the motions that they owe committee reports. Oh, actually, well, you still have to make a little committee report in case it gets pulled from consent. But you can make it like one sentence and say, the committee agreed that this is a great thing. Can you read who made the primary motions on each of those, clerk?
I can.
Oh, you've got it, okay.
On SB 31, it's Representative Harvey. On Senate Bill 32, it's Representative Harvey. And on Senate Bill 235A, it's Representative Harvey.
So, thank you again for your engagement. I just need a very brief 1 or 2 sentence blurb that they can put in the calendar in case it gets pulled from consent. Even though they're on consent, we've been told we still should provide something. Obviously, there's no opposition one, but we still need a primary one. And I will also remind people, check your drawers, the ones in the meeting room, not the ones you're wearing, and clean out anything that that you want to preserve. I'm not sure if our folders of paperwork that's in there gets carried along to the new location. I'm going to check because I would assume that they're keeping that. That's all that's in my drawer is my paperwork folder, and I would assume that they take it. Jamie might even be listening, and she might come down and tell me. But also, Fish and Game books on the desk in there. Take one. You can have one. There's 5, and we got to get rid of them because they're going to get thrown out otherwise. Well, we don't have session this week, so they got to be in the next week's calendar earliest. So I would say Friday. Friday would be fine. And so we're good. This adjourns the executive session. Thank you, everybody. And next time we meet, we'll be in a new location.